Hello, and welcome to another exciting movie review. This week I'm talking about The Free State of Jones. The Free State of Jones, directed by Gary Ross, starring Matthew McConaughey, Gugu Mbatha Raw, and Mahershala Ali. It wasn't as good as I had hoped. If it had stuck within the Civil War, it would have been fine. It would have been a good war movie, but it kept trotting along for years and years and years after the war, and it was boring. It took place between 1862 and 1874, and when it was over, I felt like I had aged 12 years. It tells the story of Newton Knight, played by Matthew McConaughey, who, as a Confederate Army nurse, went AWOL to return the corpse of someone that he only referred to as his kin. Later, I figured out that it might be his son, but he referred to a lot of people as his kin without being more specific, so I wasn't real sure until the end of the movie, when his second kid grew up a little bit. So he goes home to Jones County, Mississippi with the corpse and finds out that Confederate soldiers are going around stealing food and materials for the army that belong to the people. And then Knight gets involved and is forced to hide in the swamps with some escaped slaves from the main army. In the swamps, he befriends a slave named Moses, played by Mahershala Ali, and begins a budding romance with Rachel, played by Gugu Mbatha Raw. See, with Rachel, the movie did a weird thing where as soon as, like, she was introduced, she did some stuff, and then as soon as, like, they had a connection, it skipped ahead 85 years to, I'm not doing that kind of math, but I'm guessing the 50s, for a misogyny trial of Knight's descendant, Davis. Now, Davis Knight is clearly a white guy, and he's trying to marry another clearly white person. But somehow somebody figured out that he was an eighth black and they had to make a big whole deal about it. But since they tell you that, like the first time you meet Rachel, it takes away any mystery as to whether or not they're going to get together. It's just from then on you're just waiting and waiting, and it kind of skips the any kind of romance because you know they're going to get together, so the movie can just get them together. And as the film goes on, it tries to cut forward to introduce some obscurity to it, like, oh, we got evidence that maybe his mom or his great grandma was white, but they aren't trying very hard, and it's pretty obvious the outcome. And there was a bit of action in this movie in the beginning of the movie. They basically had everything you saw in a trailer, had you seen the trailer, plus a little bit of a Saving Private Ryan type scene in the beginning with muted colors and all the pervasive gore, but it was quickly cut short. After about an hour, all of the action just cuts off and it's just boring. Which is weird because the last two movies I reviewed were boring in the beginning and then finally found their way halfway through. As for the acting, McConaughey had a solid performance, which he consistently does. I think he had an advantage, though, because he didn't have to change his accent or anything, so he can just do the same thing he did in Dallas Buyers Club or Mud, especially. This reminded me a lot of Mud. Mahershala Ali was good, but he needed a lot more to do. They spent a little bit of time establishing his friendship with Knight, but after that, nothing happened until well after the war. Maybe the last half hour, he's helping former slaves learn how to vote, and some stuff happens to him from there. But for a solid hour in the middle, nothing. He's just standing in the background next to Knight as like a token black friend. A very white person centric movie for, a Reconstruction type thing. As for Rachel, Gugu Mbatha Raw, she was love interest. They said she was a healer in the beginning, and Knight was a male nurse. But aside from one time when she saved an infant with a fever, she didn't heal anybody. Neither did Knight. They weren't patching up wounded people ever. It was just that was all to her character, was that she was his future second wife. Her character was a slave who would, I guess, leave her plantation whenever she wanted to, because back then security was really lax, and go bring supplies out to the swamps for the Maroons. Are they Maroons when they're in America? Because I know they're Maroons in the Caribbean. I don't know if they have a special name for escaped slaves in America. In conclusion, The Free State of Jones didn't have enough content to make a terribly interesting movie. They couldn't make a Civil War movie because there was only like 2 battles that it took for them to establish themselves as a sovereign state. And they couldn't make a Reconstruction movie because that would be so depressing. Especially with the cutting to 85 years in the future where nothing has changed. It's still super illegal for white people and black people to get married. There's no satisfying resolution to this. The movie just ends. And I think that they could have just did a Civil War movie a little bit after the Reconstruction. Maybe just skip to the end to show off Moses's. All right, spoilers. Moses gets lynched. But if you want to see this movie, just watch 12 Years a Slave. It's a much better movie. It covers the exact same amount of time, but just slightly earlier, back when slavery was legal all over the place. And it didn't have like any action scenes in it, but it was a much more enthralling movie. And I really wish I had just done a pop star review, because I would have had a lot more fun talking about that. This movie was just depressing and slow and long and forever taking. And I feel like this was less a movie about slavery than it was a movie about communism. And I would know because I spent my winter watching Trumbo and Bridge of Spies and Ave Kaisar, so I've seen plenty of communism movies recently. He kept using the N-word, I think incorrectly. He was using it to mean proletariat. This was definitely more of a class warfare movie than racially charged. And I'm reworking my grading system, so I'm just going to skip it because it's arbitrary. My number system before was arbitrary and it just didn't make any sense or have any purpose, because it's not like I was actually taking off points for certain mistakes or anything. What the fuck do I know? Alright, thank you for watching. Goodbye.